Hello, I'm Jennifer Vatsa.
I'm Lamia Nightstorm.
And today we're going to talk about the Underworld. So, what should we talk about the Underworld?
I don't know.
Where is it? What is it? How do you get there? Who all is in the Underworld?
Who isn't in the Underworld?
I know, right?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to get to the Underworld in this room alone. Come to think of it, but it's not just a place for dead people.
Right. I mean, it's you look at it in like every aspect of mythology, various cultures throughout all the history of time have various mythos and entities, goddesses, deities, etc., associated with the underworld.
Here is
Occult.
We have Miss Kali.
Got Arachne over there.
Arachne, the Morrigan. This will help you get to the Underworld. We have some dead people here representing,
like you do.
It happens.
But so you've been working with the Underworld for a long time.
Yeah.
How many years have you been doing Underworld stuff? Because I'm a little more new to it, so.
All my life, but yeah, like all my life probably.
Mm.
But
I think intentionally, for me, it's been more recent over the past year or so, but probably there's been like a very heavy death current in my life since I was a young child. Like I was always, as a 5-year-old, I was very aware of death, more so than most 5-year-olds were, because when I was 5, my kindergarten teacher, who was young, dropped dead of a heart attack in class in front of us.
Oh, wow.
So no one explains to you what to do when that happens when you're 5 years old. So we didn't know what death was, so we thought she had fallen asleep. So we were trying to wake her up and stuff, and then we realized that something was wrong, so we went to go find an adult. But we didn't have the words to, tell our parents what happened, and this was because we're old. This was a long time ago, so it took the school a long time to call on, the rotary phone with the dials and all that stuff, our parents, to tell them what. This is, so long ago, we didn't even have area codes, so just saying. Because I kept saying something to my mom about her leg, and my mom was just kind of like, what are you talking about? But then later, they kind of explained to the parents what happened and stuff like that. But from a young age, I was very aware of death. So there's always been kind of a death current in my life.
Well, all the women in my family are tied to death in some way. They, most of them either speak with the dead or see the dead or hear the dead. I'm, as far as I know, the only one who kind of threw myself into that and actually actively engaged with it and have developed the skills along those lines. Otherwise it's just been kind of like a family tradition, but it's so ingrained, nobody even realizes it's not a normal thing. It's just...
Well, yeah, my heritage is Eastern European, so there's a lot of, in Slavic witchcraft and folk magic of that region, there's a lot of cemetery magic, death magic. There's a lot of cultural traditions surrounding how death is handled of a family member. You wear black for 6 months after, depending on the degree of loved one, and then there's if there's something, you can wear gray if this happens, if you have to go to this thing or a wedding or something. There's a lot of very specific things. I'm sure some of that's changed over the years and stuff like that, but...
Well, but each culture does handle how they have it. Some cultures, it's very taboo to mourn. You need to celebrate, you don't want to...
Yeah.
hold your loved one's energy here by mourning and holding on to that. So they throw a party to kind of release it and help them move on.
I think there's also a period of time, especially like in the Slavic folk tradition of, I think it's maybe 40 days that the spirit is still bound to the earth after the person physically dies, and stuff like that. So there's things that revolve around that, and then there's the more like literal mourning period, in which certain things do and don't happen. You wear black all the time, and you're in a literal state of mourning. So it's not so much a celebratory thing. I mean,
more cultural.
Yeah, Eastern Europeans can be a little grim sometimes.
Yeah. Just saying. Well, I don't know. There is the whole tradition of doing the wake, and that's where literally a family member would sit by the deceased for. I mean, sometimes they did it for 5-7 days, but do you know why it developed as a tradition? It came out of the fear of getting buried alive.
Oh, yeah.
So what they would do is the wake was basically to make sure the dead person stayed dead before they buried them. And then they started getting smelly. So,
I mean, that's something like, if you think of like a lot of the funerary flowers, that was to cover up the stink of death. Like lilies and things like that. That's why they're associated with death, because there was something that were used early as like funerary flowers.
They've even found pollen in some Neanderthal burials. So, yeah, that's one of the pieces of evidence they used to support that they had more culture than what is normally attributed to them.
Well, I mean, when you're looking back that far, you don't have obviously written or recorded records of things other than cave paintings and petroglyphs and things like that. So, what can you tell of the culture from the tools and artifacts and things that are actually left after hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions?
Well, I have a question for you, and this people ask me this, and I'm never quite sure how to answer it. They've asked me lots of times, what's the difference between the underworld and the infernal realm? And to me, the infernal realm is a place that exists within the underworld, but everywhere exists within the underworld. But for you, is there more of a division between that boundary line or something? Or?
I mean, I think of it as, you've got all these different realms, whether you're talking about, the underworld in a sort of generic term, or whether you're thinking about, the Sumerian underworld or like Hecate's underworld and things like that. I've actually, gotten a bit of like gnosis and downloads of how kind of a lot of these things intersect in trying to figure out how to visually explain it without a picture in front of me. So, like, thinking of it in terms of, like, sort of the infinity symbol. So you've got, like, these multi-layered kind of things that kind of overlap and all kind of go together and intersect at various points. So, you've kind of got, say, the celestial realm, which is what you would think of as sort of like the angelic kind of sphere and that. Then you kind of have the infernal spheres, what you think of sort of like the dark goddesses, demons, things like that. And then, you kind of have the physical realm, and then you've kind of got underworld realms, you've got the astral realm, and, whether you want to break it down even to, like, the Fey realm, and because all these things kind of overlap.
So would you say we could use the term realm, sphere, and, world or otherworld interchangeably?
I think so. I mean, I do sometimes. Like, a lot of times we quibble over semantics. It's like, are they spirits? Are they demons, angels, gods, goddesses, deities, whatever? I like to say entities just because it's general.
I think it gets really confusing.
Especially some people get a little, like, perturbed if you refer to something as a demon because they still think of it in a negative connotation.
Well, the thing is, there's no common lexicon that we all use.
Right.
And depending on how you entered whichever... I don't even consider... I don't see a distinction between a left-hand path and right-hand path, personally. And I have friends that claim
some ways,
each, but I mean, to me, it's like you can heal or kill with light. You can heal or kill
Mhm.
with darkness.
Mhm.
It all kind of blends. But a lot of people coming in, like, I think, they may hear, like, the big one for me when I first really started practicing was visualization.
Mhm.
And I had the worst time with it. I was actually lucky enough to be studying with a coven now.
Mhm.
And so we would always do these guided meditations. They'd be like, visualize this. And I'd be like, I try and I try and I try. Like, after about 4 or 5 months, we were doing another one and I busted out crying in front of the whole group.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I can't do it. I'm never going to be a witch. I'm never going to be able to be a witch because I can't visualize. And the one guy pulled me aside and he said, sit down. I'm like, I can't do it. He's like, just sit down. Just not close your eyes. He's like, tell me what the steering wheel of your car looks like.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay. So I told him. And then he kept asking me more questions about the inside of my car. He said, okay, now you're done. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm done? I still don't know how to visualize. He goes, yeah, you do. Or you couldn't have told me what the inside of your car looked like.
Right.
And I was just like, wait, what? That's what visualization means? And that was when it dawned on me that, like, these words,
Right.
people don't know what they mean in practice. We think we know what they mean, but I was expecting to see 3D, 4K. I couldn't see that, so therefore I couldn't visualize.
I mean, it takes a while to get there. Like, when I first started doing that, like astral travel and stuff, where it's like, at first I was feeling like shapes and shadows and light, maybe a little bit of color, but like things weren't kind of coming together in what, how I would describe this room or that painting or whatever. That it's a matter of, you develop those skills over time. Now, for me, having a visual arts background, it's a little easier for me. And also, I find one of the things that's helped the most in that, like, I like having done a lot of like online video games and like virtual world stuff, because it's like I know how to visually build things in that sense, where you look like, okay, I've got a little square green plot of land. How do I make my castle on that? How do I terraform the land? Where do I put the mountains? Do I put, the castle here, here, here? How do I build that? And being able to kind of visually do that, I find that for me, that's helped.
I see it more as Photoshop layers.
Exactly.
Kind of, but yeah.
You're building.
I have noticed that a lot of people that have an artistic background that I've spoke with, like, we tend to get messages as a visual a lot of times.
Sometimes, yeah.
Not always, but like I'll get words mixed with pictures, mixed with like the best thing I could say is like an emotion or an intuition. Like, so I get all of these thrown at me and they're not necessarily in sequence.
And it also depends how your senses are open too. Like, I have because of what I do as an herbalist and perfumer and aromatherapist, I have a very keen sense of smell and clairalience. So like I can like break down a memory. Like, I can look at family Christmas dinner at my grandparents' house, which hasn't happened in decades at this point, probably at least over a decade at this point. But yeah, I could sit there at the table, break down every single dish, how it smells, how it tastes. I could smell my grandmother's coffee, exactly how I guess her Folgers coffee with, the milk or half and half in it, exactly how it smells, break down how each thing smells individually and collectively in that sense. So it's like I have that skill set built. And it was something I developed more when I was studying perfuming, because how do you describe smell? Like, how do I tell you, this perfume has, lemony top notes with, a jasmine vanilla base note and, and some, deep, woodsy aroma. I'm like, are you going to know what that smells like by that description?
Right.
But what do you, like, so they taught us how to think about aroma, which is something I can't be like, here's the smell of jasmine, especially when you're doing something either on camera or on the internet, because we don't have smell-o-vision yet.
Yeah. Keep hoping. Yeah. I probably couldn't get that to work either.
You would break it.
I would. I would never smell.
Yes. Yes. But so thinking about an aroma and breaking it down. Well, okay, like breaking it down into things that are concrete. And that's a great exercise to do when you're building your your, like, whether it's Claire Angustus, which is the taste, and then there's Claire Alliance. There's a whole bunch of Claires.
You know, that's something nobody ever talks about either. They think if they can't do one thing, then it doesn't work for them. But like,
but you can build those.
You
skills.
can have them in every, like, all your five senses, plus your psychic, plus this, plus that. Yeah.
Because in perfuming, we had to take, like, say, 20 different aromas in different, like, aroma families, and then we had to sit there and go, okay, here's jasmine. What color is jasmine? Not what color are jasmine flowers, but when you think of the scent of jasmine, what color? To me, I see lavender. Yellow. You see yellow, I see lavender. You know, while jasmine flowers are very white.
Right.
You know, and it's they give like that. Okay, is it warm or cool in the temperature? What season does it remind you of? Is there a song? What song? If jasmine was music, what type of music would it be?
I do a very similar class to this with like one of the very first classes I do when I'm doing teaching someone energy work. I call it Meet the Elements, but basically it's the same thing. I'll have them sit in the ground and put their fingers in the dirt. I'm like, now, what does earth feel like? And they'll first describe what it feels like. And I'm like, okay, now, what does it sound like? What does it taste like?
Yeah. Being able to go through those things. I mean, for anything in developing any of your psychic skills and abilities, being able to kind of go through and think of it in those contexts really does open it up to, you're going to start thinking and seeing and feeling things differently there.
See, I think the hardest thing, and because I never had to do it by myself, like I said, I first started studying they taught me my basic energy manipulation skills and things like that with a coven that I worked with, but there were specialists. So the entire group, you know, there were people that could see energy. There were people that could manipulate it. There were people that could hear things. There were people, you know, like, you know, the spectrum. And as they would run us through these different exercises that we had to do as students, they would, you know, when they found where we were strong, then they could help us develop it, and where we were weak, they'd help build it up. But like, I don't know how people actually learn how to do it independently. Like, it's really hard to just pick a book off the shelf and it'll say, well, you know, call
Make
on
an
the element of air.
Yeah.
How the fuck do I call on the element? Hello, air? Like, you know, but they don't explain the basics of like, what are you actually like doing? Like, and without having someone to say, yeah, you really did do that. Yeah, that is a ball. Or, no, yeah, there's no ball there. You know, like,
well, it's learning how to sense energy is that takes time and practice. And a lot of this kind of, because we've gotten a little bit off topic on the underworld aspect of things. Shocking, I know.
Right?
But I mean, all these little things do feed in to how you're going to experience the underworld, the astral realm, and any realm really in your travels in the spiritual world. And, you know, being able to visualize, being able to sense energy, being able to do all these things is going to enhance that experience. Because I get a lot of questions I get are, I'm not good at meditation. I don't know how to do visualization. I don't know how to, I'm not having any luck astral travel and stuff like that. It's like, you can't go from, putting together a paper airplane to building a 747 overnight. Right. There's a lot of steps in between there where you're learning. And some people are going to be more adept at it. I am admittedly sometimes terrible at meditating because I'm ADD as fuck and ADHD as fuck. And
then there's the other thing too. Like, you might say you're astral projecting to X, Y, or Z, right? I might say, well, I'm traveling down to the underworld to go to X, Y, or Z. You and I may be doing the same process,
calling it different things,
even possibly trying to go to the same destination, and totally just using different words.
Yeah, because
people miss that.
Yeah, because I mean, when I go to the Underworld, I'm either in a very deep meditative state, or semi-trance state, or astral,
I could just
astral traveling, soul traveling, whatever.
I can stay here and be there, like right now I'm in both because we're talking about it. I guess it's like by location.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that too with astral travel and stuff, where it's kind of like, you know, I could be still astral traveling, but like, you know what, gotta get up and go pee and grab a snack, so, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go all the way back to the beginning and you know, start the process of trying to get there again.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something. And like my advice to people always is starting out is, you know, start slow. Like, you know, even if you can only do it for like 2 or 3 minutes, just start there. That's enough. Yeah. You have to train your brain. We live in a world of constant stimulation, sensory overload, and all these things. There's so much noise and light and things. Like for me, I more often than not will put an eye mask or an eye pillow on, or an eye mask or something like that when I'm doing that kind of work, because I need to, for whatever reason, I find the pressure on my eyes to be relaxing, but I need to kind of block out some of that. Or I have like ambient binaural beats, meditation music, or guided meditation or something on, because that helps
Music helps me a lot. Music or dancing or rhythm, or...
I usually have to be laying down. Sitting doesn't work as well for me, because my back starts to hurt. Like right now my back hurts.
I tend to go to sleep if I lay down.
Eventually I'll drift off, but sometimes I'll be in a meditative state for a few hours before I actually fall asleep. You know,
I think I walk around in a meditative state half the time.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. The stupor.
Yeah. Well, I've always been aware of like the fairy realms, and like when I, you know, as I learned more and traveled to different places and learned more cultures and more realms, well, the process though is the same. Like slipping from one realm to another is not hard for me in the slightest. Right. Sometimes it's much, much harder for me to pull my focus to like this world and see what's much to the chagrin of my partners.
You're traveling through
it drives them insane.
You know, the traditional travel methods, you know, don't necessarily apply. And thinking beyond that's not like, okay, well, I've got to walk from Lilith's realm to Lucifer's realm now. Right. It's like, no, you can like crack open a, you know, sort of a dimensional rift through, or, you know, you can fly there on a
use
dragon.
Your magic whistle.
Exactly.
Like your teleportation whistle from Mario.
You know, you can, you know, do that. You can, I rode a lightning bolt to the Underworld once, you know, like you do.
I often fly down with the Morrigan. She'll just...
Yeah, I've
she taught me to teleport, basically.
Sometimes, you know, shape-shifting into, like, you know, owls or stuff like that. So, you know, if you're wanting to go from one place to another place, so if you're working, say, with... Because sometimes, you know, you bounce around, or someone, like, goes, hey, come here!
Well, that's a good point, though. If somebody was just learning to go to the Underworld, or still... I mean, we always keep exploring it, in my opinion. Like, I haven't explored it all, but I think getting a psychopomp guide, a spirit guide, that's a psychopomp is invaluable.
Now, how would you recommend going about that? Or who would you recommend working with for that type of thing?
I think it depends on the person. There's psychopomps in every culture. They're basically if you read any mythology around the world, it's whoever carries the messages from the land of the living to the land of the dead are going to be your psychopomp.
So, like the Morrigan?
The Morrigan's one, which is the one I use the most. But there's like Persephone is a good one, Anubis. Most of the deities that are associated with the underworld are also psychopomps if they have any overworld at all associations. Unless they're strictly... Like the Norse goddess Hel, she's not really a psychopomp because she stays in hell, like in her. They don't see it as a place of fire there. It's a hall, like another Norse hall. So in Hell's Land, she doesn't leave her hall, but the ones that travel back and forth to Inanna, Fae, Jinn, anyone that crosses that barrier regularly. Valkyries.
Yeah. I don't know that I necessarily, like, I like sit there and think about something like, I'm not really conscious of working with a particular spirit guide. Like, I just kind of, go where I go and do what I do. And it's not like I have someone kind of guiding me through.
But usually...
But also, I've worked with other...
You do path workings, then, more specifically, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like going to a specific address using your GPS.
Right.
You know where you're heading, So then you don't need a cyclopump as much unless you're exploring.
And there's times where I've worked with Lilith, and Lilith's taken me to, Astarte's realm or Hecate's overworld realm and things like that, where... So it's sort of like, in that circumstance, she acted as that kind of psychopomp, spirit guide, what have you.
The dark goddesses pass me off one to another. Like, I get tossed around like a football half the time. But it's usually because I have to learn something from one of them.
And sometimes, it's... You might be working with an entity for a very long period of time or a very short time, or in weird intermittent chunks.
This is true. Some people think that they've pissed a spirit off if they leave. It's like, no, they come. Some of them come and go.
No,
some of them stay. Some of them will be with you your whole lives. Some just a few.
I mean,
some you only meet once.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what you need, or what you want to get out of it. Like, I mean, I worked with Freya like once, and she's very tall and like breezes in with like that like ice chill. So what kind of stuff do you do in the underworld?
Oh boy. Let's see. A lot of the work I did in the underworld when I first started was going down and like finding random souls of the dead and releasing them, because they'll get stuck in little pockets kind of where they can't progress out of the pocket. So you have to go and kind of, eventually they would get unstuck, but you can help unstick them and just help them move along. And that's kind of how I started. So I did a lot of that as, I guess, training, because I mean, then you learn how to do more advanced skills and more advanced skills. And but I can take souls out of the underworld. I can help.
How about someone who's stuck in between?
Ancestral lines? Oh yeah, crossings like from here to there. I do that. The part I'm not comfortable with, which is odd, is like the transition point between life and death. Like as people are crossing. Now, if they're already dead and on this side, I'm cool. But if they're alive on this side, it makes me uncomfortable. I can do it, but it makes me uncomfortable, and I don't know.
Well, you have to carry that death essence, and the death essence of like the dying, like just died, like now, is very
different.
It's very powerful and very cold, like literally cold. Like it could be 100 degrees outside, and it'll suddenly feel like 20 degrees flew through you.
Yeah,
if you've ever experienced that before, but.
They used to call it, somebody just walked across my grave.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
Yeah.
That's when you get that sudden cold.
Well, no, I've had that when I've witnessed deaths and things like that. I used to work in a hospital, so, that happened.
I worked in a morgue. I was okay with that, My patients didn't have a good recovery rate, but...
No. Morgues don't smell very good either. Yeah. Death smells like a fish market.
Or worse.
Yeah. Not so great, actually. But, I think in our experiences in life and how inform how we process death, and also in that how we incorporate that into working with the underworld. Because I've always been, as I mentioned earlier, with, my kindergarten teacher having had a heart attack and died in front of us. Like, I've always been aware of the spiritual realm. Like, one of my earliest beliefs I always talk about was I believed in reincarnation. Who explains that to the 6-year-old Catholic schoolgirl? I don't know. Right. But it was just something that made sense to me. Because I knew I lived before. And I was aware of the house we lived in when we had lived in Georgia for a brief period of time. I think the bedroom I was in, the daughter of the family that lived there before was killed in a car accident. And I just kind of remember kind of as a child being aware of that spirit, feeling it or seeing her death in that sense, being able to visualize it. And, just kind of always having a fascination with death, not like in a grim, like creepy serial killer way, but like just wanting to understand it more because there's so much taboo and stigma around it. Because I'm a firm death with dignity kind of person. Because I think it should be a choice for people.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know. I think it's just one of those things that everyone knows they can't get away from.
Right.
And so many people are afraid of it. They run from it their entire lives. And there's no reason to do that because she always catches you in the end.
But what if death is the gift?
Sometimes it is. And people don't think of that either. Like, what about somebody who is in agony? Santa Muerte is not always like cold and scary. Sometimes, she brings peace, and that's why, that's how I see her different robes. To me, like La Blanca, the white robe is the one that provides peace to those who need it, or the very, somebody passes in their sleep, the very gentle way of going. Whereas like, La Roca or La Blanca, who are the red and the black, they're more like, say, bloody car crashes or a school shooting, or you die in a war, or those really ugly deaths. Well, that has to happen too. So I think that's why, and I don't know if that's why that robe system developed. I don't really know.
I don't know that much.
I do know that like Santa Muerte is always near. I've worked with her here and there, but I am not a devotee of hers where I do not keep an altar for her. I don't. I will work with her in her realm, like in the cemetery. I will go if I need to work with her, but at this point, I have so many other spirits of the dead. Like, she needs a lot of dedication and devotion, and I don't feel I can give her as much exclusivity as she might prefer, or as much time as she might prefer.
Yeah. So, like, you talked a little bit about what you ended up doing in the underworld. I said underwear realm. That's a different topic for another day.
Well, that could be another whole.
Yes, what we do in the underwear realm. Shocking details. 3 a.m. Black Magic Standard Time.
We're usually having slumber parties with all the other insomniacs.
Yes. So, I mean, for me in my underworld journeys, it's some of it is personal development and like shadow work. Like, I did an underworld initiation and with different entities. Like, I was working with Morgan, Hecate, Arachne, and in that part, Ereshkigal and Nurgle. So Tisa Morte's come up a couple times, but I haven't really done like specific work with her. But what I've started to do in this particular aspect of the underworld is I've been building my own personal cemetery there, or graveyard. And it's where I'm burying sort of like that which no longer serves me, the things I don't need, the things that I want to destroy. Like, here lies my, lack of self-confidence, or, here lies, this bullshit thing I think about myself, my self-doubt or something like that.
Speaking of that, if you don't have a place in the underworld to do that, you can do that in a real cemetery.
True.
Just a little tip for those out there. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something I've been working on is burying things there. And, you know, some of it is also like in a way of like if I'm binding something or having a place to kind of like, okay, I'm just going to stick this here and bury it. So it's just kind of taken care of. So it can't keep causing harm in that sense.
That makes sense.
So, I mean, that's, and I kind of go back and forth with Underworld workings and stuff.
See, I see working with the Underworld on this side being important too. Like, I'll go and clean headstones or 10 untended graves or clean cemeteries. And that's just stuff, you know, I kind of do, I don't know, just in service of the dead in general. Because people forget there's a whole lot more forgotten dead than there are like ones that we know. So
that's very true. I mean, in the Underworld, you could be working with, you know, underworld deities, demons, goddesses, etc.
Which is mostly what I do.
Yeah, same here. Or you could be working with like your ancestors, things like that, spirits of the dead.
Yeah, my ancestors are my next lovely adventure that I get to go on. That'll be fun.
I don't do a whole lot of ancestor work. They come to me in dreams when they need to tell me something, but I don't really kind of go seeking it out.
Well,
They're just like, tap, tap, tap. Okay. I'm like, all right, cool. Thanks. Got it.
I haven't really exactly much either until they started. You know, you need to.
You know, I figure I let them come to me. Like the dead will always come to me in dreams. And I can always tell. Like, you know, when you're dreaming about someone, whether they're living or dead, that's different. When you've either merged dream realms or that person has come through from the underworld or whatever, especially if it's a dead person or deceased relative or friend or something like that, you just know it's different. I don't know how to explain it. It's just the energy signature is different.
You can, I can't explain it either.
Because sometimes even in the dream, like if other people are around, I can see them in the dream. The other people can't. So that's something I've noticed a few times.
Yeah. I woke up a few weeks ago and I had a dream. And I never met my father when he was alive. And I had this dream that I spoke to him in this dream. I won't go into the whole dream. It's long. But when I woke up, I was literally crying. Like, I knew that was my father. Like, and it was totally different than, like, I don't do a lot of dream work. You know, but this was totally different. This was not a dream. It was almost like I was more like doing an underworld journey than dreaming. You know, it had more of that
might
feel.
Have been, yeah. I mean, like, well, the dream realm is a realm too.
It is, yeah.
And they can like when you're doing all this work and jumping from realm to realm and stuff, things can kind of get intermingled together, and
they all start getting blurry sometimes. And
it's like, did I dream that? Did I meditate that? Did I read it? Did I see something?
You know, and I found more and more when I wake up in the morning, like for the first like 10, 15, maybe even 30 seconds, sometimes I'm like, where am I? Who am I? When am I? You know, like, and I have to, it's weird. Like I have to reorient myself in time and space and this body and everything. Yeah. And I don't know why that's happening, but it's really unsettling.
Yeah, it is.
And I would understand if I did a lot of drugs or drank the night before, but this is
fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, like I feel like sometimes like time has gotten really weird since I started doing a lot of this work, and
well, time moves differently in other realms. So
yeah, I mean,
when you travel back and forth, it fucks up your timeline here. Eventually.
Yeah. I mean, there's times where I'm like, I was meditating for 20 minutes and came back 3 hours later. I'm like, I can't meditate for 3 hours, but I was gone for 3 hours, so hey.
Well, I've had things happen before I do the thing that caused them. that like a lot of times they'll manifest first. A lot of times it's when I've been thinking about doing a ritual, which honestly, if you think about it in enough detail, it's like you've already done it. So that makes sense. But sometimes it'll be things that I haven't been aware of. But like, so it'll be like, this thing happens, then I do a ritual, and then I realize, wait a minute, the result already manifested last week. You know, it's like the ritual just confirmed. You already got that, bitch. Stop asking again.
Yeah.
You know?
It's more like a thank you note, right? Here's a ritual I was supposed to do for that thing that happened last week.
I've done that before. I had a friend that was sick, and I was terribly upset. And I'm like, I'm going to go down. I'm going to fucking give offerings to every spirit I know. And I'm, you know, I don't know if it'll help, but I have to do something. And then I got a call, and they're saying, you know, I feel much better. And I'm like, but I didn't do anything yet. So I ran downstairs and did it. Sometimes that isn't. If that happens, if you get your effect first, make sure you do the ritual, though.
Right, right. It's sort of like, it's like, if I tell you I'm going to send you Reiki energy to heal your headache might just go away by me telling you that, because it's sort of that power of suggestion kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but, I mean, when you do, especially for doing distance Reiki and things like that, or Reiki, I always make long vowels for whatever reason. So I mispronounce a lot of words. It happens.
Don't we all, though? Like, we're such eggheads. We read these words in the book, and we're like, oh, I don't know how to say that. I'm just reading on.
But, you know, what's interesting is when you're like, okay, you know, I'll send you some Reiki, but you don't tell them what exactly you're doing. Because you'll start to see things when you're doing that kind of energy work on someone. You'll be like, oh, I felt, you know, I started seeing this or hearing this, or, you know, this spirit came up, or, you know, I was feeling, you know, some tension in your shoulders or whatever. So that's always something that I find interesting on both ends, because sometimes the receiver will also pick up things from you as well.
I've done rituals for people. Like, something I told them I would be doing, but, you know, it might be something, I'll be doing it sometime this week. And then as I'm doing it, or right after I've done, they'll be like, did you do something? Is something going on? Like, I'm like, why? What's going on with you? And then, yeah, they'll know, like, when it happened, kind of. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. All right. So, any last final thoughts on Underworld stuff for those just kind of starting out and exploring?
Well, I would say my tips, first thing, work with your ancestors. They're the easiest ones to work with on the other side, because they're connected to you. You know, if you're going to be traveling, find a psychopomp to work with. If not, at least know where you want to go and go to that place and come back. I'd say if you're starting. Those would be my tips anyway.
I mean, like, some people, like, I apparently have excellent, you know, other realm GPS navigation built-in system, so I don't really get lost very often. I mean, yeah, I end up in weird places sometimes.
If I get lost, it's usually I needed to get lost for a reason, you know, and I'll come across something random.
Or I know how to, you know, just be like, all right, well, I'm here and I want to go there. Let's just go.
But if you can't do that at first, that's okay. But don't go just roaming about unattended, because there's lots of things that can destroy you in the underworld as well.
Same in the astral realm. I mean, a lot of times people talk about, you know, like astral parasites and things like that, or parasitic entities. I've personally never run into anything with that.
No.
But, you know,
I've seen it. I mean, I've seen them on people. I've never had to deal with them, but I don't know. Anyway, well,
thank you.
Sounds like it'll be fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess we'll say goodnight and talk to everyone later.
Bye-bye.
Rolling.